Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Irish Ronan. The goal of this channel is to find and amplify quality games by indie devs. So far, I've been making videos presenting top 10 games from jams that I participate in. This time, I'm trying something new. The Indie Spotlight series is a new series that I'm starting where I find a great game that was recently released by an indie dev and I review it in depth. This can include commentary on game design, graphics, sounds, feel, structure, anything worth commenting on, and anything that may help other devs identify some aspects of game making that they may not have considered before. So, now that you know what to expect, let's begin. This episode's game is called The Lost Eternity by Darn Geek, Hurlis, Seniltai, and Conquitor. This game was created for the Major Jam 6 Life over the course of a week. This jam is still going, actually, and still accepting ratings for the submissions. So, at the end of the video, head on over there, play the game, and give it a rating. The theme for the jam was multiple applications. In this game, you play as Reginald, a scuba diving, submarine piloting adventurer that has been separated from his party after some sort of difficulty during an expedition to the Arctic. Your goal is to reunite with your party and complete the expedition. In order to do that, you'll need to pilot your submarine, the Eternity, through and around a series of underwater channels and obstacles while occasionally getting out of the sub to go and retrieve some materials. So let's dive right in. Pun absolutely intended. Let's dive into the gameplay. In keeping with the theme of the jam, the game features several play modes that you will need to switch between. The first is what I'll call diver mode. In this mode, you're swimming freely outside of the sub and have to keep an eye on your oxygen reserves, and the primary reason to go for a swim is to pick up, various items that are floating in the water, such as duct tape to repair your sub. Now, how does duct tape repair a hull breach at depths of a couple thousand fathoms? Don't ask stupid questions. The second mode is interior mode. This happens between entering the sub and piloting the sub. In this mode, you can patch up the Eternity as needed, and interface with a monitor that gives you some information about the sub, the expedition, current depth, that kind of thing. The third mode, and this is where you'll spend most of your time in the game, is sub mode. In this mode, you're actually piloting the Eternity through ever more challenging terrain, searching for upgrades and the rest of your party. There's also a nice little mechanic that allows for some light, puzzle-based gameplay, a grappling hook, which allows you to grab and drag certain elements different places in the game for different reasons. What I really like about the interplay between these modes is that you're forced to switch between them, and they all serve a purpose, and they're all very intuitive. Simple, easy to grasp controls, arrow keys for movement, E to interact, mouse to use the grappling hook. And so your basic sort of game loop is steer the sub, trying to get somewhere new. If you hit something, get out of the sub, find some duct tape, get back in the sub, use the duct tape, keep on moving. The sub is straightforward to control, but easy to let get out of hand if you aren't paying attention. There's a nice attention to the detail in the sub, continuing to drift a bit, even after you've released the movement keys. It's not anything groundbreaking, but it's good attention to detail, and I like that kind of thing. Additionally, I like that, as compared to many other submarine games or submarine levels within, larger games, the goal here is caution rather than speed. You're not racing to the finish and trying to navigate this terrain as fast as you can while getting hit as little as possible. You're really just trying to get hit as little as possible. In dive mode, the controls are very similar to in sub mode. I mean, obviously, there's different coefficients on the back end, that sort of thing. You're not swimming as fast as the sub can swim. And you also have a nice little light that you can turn on your helmet, which is a purely aesthetic touch, but one that I enjoyed, and so I felt it was worth mentioning. It's got a very satisfying little click, and then a little light comes on. I like it. Switching back and forth between these modes is seamless and solves well for the potential problem of monotony that could arise from piloting a relatively slow craft. Which brings us nicely along to game feel. Generally speaking, I like fast-paced game. This could be a byproduct of my generation's short attention span, or maybe just a personal preference. Either way, that's my preference most of the time. This game is decidedly not fast-paced. You are in a slow-moving sub. You walk slowly inside the sub. You swim slowly outside of the sub. But the thing is, that doesn't matter. I like it anyway because of the atmosphere that's being created in the game. You're deep underwater, it's dark, and it feels cold. Part of that is the excellent choice of color palette that manages to feel cold without being comprised entirely of various shades of pale blue and white. And the other part comes from the story. You're told very early and often that you're in the Arctic, and this gives you your imagination something to work with, right? It's you don't have to communicate everything visually, although this game does do a very good job of that. The fact that you know you're in the Arctic makes you think of this water as being cold, and that's a good decision on the part of the devs. Additionally, there's no music to speak of, so as you're building this atmosphere, there's not some melody that you're hearing 3,000 times. Instead, all you're hearing is kind of like bubble noises and the droning of your equipment, and this adds a sense of isolation and tension. You are alone in a precarious and unknown situation, which again allows your imagination to do some of the work. What are things that humans are scared of? Things that are unknown, things that are dangerous, and it's just a little bit tense. And it's easy to fall into something like a trance while playing this because the audio is almost like white noise between the machinery and the bubbles and all that kind of thing. And when you find yourself in that state, it makes that ticking of an activated sea mine or the muted boom of a hull breach all the more impactful when it happens because you were kind of zoned out. All that to say, it doesn't matter that the game is not fast paced because the sense of tension that's created, not like horror movie, thriller kind of tension, but more like a job interview or something like that. You know what I mean? Where like you know how to handle it, but there is also this constant possibility that you could screw up at any second and need to quickly reach for that metaphorical duct tape to patch it up. Another heavily contributing component to the game feel are the visuals. Aside from the beautiful pixel art that's on display, and it really is beautiful, there are some excellent details that really help the game feel cohesive. This includes, a wide array of tiny nuances that you probably wouldn't notice as you're playing unless you're looking for them. And all those little tweaks and changes and details add up to much more than the sum of their parts. For example, the propeller only spins when you're moving forward and backwards, not up and down. The propeller is also tied to the speed of the sub. So, you know, like how a propeller on a submarine would work. Good job. Or, for a more tonal example, the interior of the sub is brightly lit in a game that's primarily dark. This strikes me as a deliberate choice. There could just be that kind of like dark red light that we see in movies like Hunt for Red October and stuff on the interior of submarines, but that's not what it is here. It's a bright light white. Bright light white. No. Bright white light. Yes. Why? Well, I can't say for sure what the team had in mind, but to me, it felt safe. You're in a hostile environment. It's cold and dark, and you almost just ran out of oxygen trying to get some duct tape outside the sub, and getting back to the sub and getting inside of it feels like a relief. He's dressed like a normal guy. It's the only time you see Reginald's face, and he seems calm. He walks slowly. He's at ease. He's safe in the sub. That's the way I took it anyway. Speaking of lighting, the floodlights on the exterior of the sub play an interesting role because you can see every interactable object in the level without the floodlights. You can see everything. But what they do is they add a sense of immersion as things pass into and out of the lights that adds a very nice touch. Additionally, I think there is a single layer of particles, I could be wrong, but I think there's just one layer of particles floating around at all times that's only made visible via those floodlights. This is a particularly nice touch because those particles are extremely slow moving, which, when they're over water, makes the water seem more realistic, and deep water doesn't move very fast, so the particles suspended in it would also not move very fast. But when the light shines over, like rocks, it looks almost, to me, like the twinkle of minerals or something like that that are embedded in the rock. So again, just a nice, simple touch that adds a lot to the atmosphere. Those same floodlights also play an interesting psychological role for the player. If you look at the ship, you'll notice that the tail of the sub is not well illuminated. There's a light there, but the most protruding parts of the craft are hard to see, which, intentional or not, caused me to slam into more than one subterranean outcropping because my brain was paying attention to the lights and not the actual profile of the ship. Final note on visuals is how it gets darker as you go deeper. Not a new idea. In fact, that That's just how water works. But it's done well. The color changes almost imperceptibly. And what I really like about this is the devs had enough faith in their visual storytelling not to put some throwaway line into the dialogue like, boy, it's sure dark down here. Speaking of dialogue, let's talk for a minute about the story. You are thrown into the game in medias res after some calamity that caused you to become separated from your party. The devs took a page out of Bioshock's book and probably some other games, in that the story is primarily conveyed through recordings from your team that you discovered during gameplay. So rather than records or cassettes or anything like that, these recordings take place in the form of small, I don't even know, recording devices, or radios, or something like that, floating in the water. But Ronan, you might say, how could an electronic device survive in extremely deep water at sub-zero temperatures? To that I say, what did I say about asking stupid questions? How does Samus survive getting squished into a sphere the size of a basketball? Anyway, as the story progresses, we learn that the expedition was looking for something specific. We learn about the questionable state of mind of one of the crew members, and we're teased with little details of what to expect as we move through the game. This is good storytelling. It keeps you engaged. It's every message ends with something, I won't say cliffhanger, but it plants a couple additional seeds in your mind of what's going to happen next. That's just good storytelling. Another subtle touch is that if and when you die and your sub explodes, it doesn't say game over or you died. It says your expedition was lost. That puts an additional emotional burden on you. Your team is waiting for you to rescue them. So in a very subtle way, that statement upon losing raises the stakes. So overall, the story, even if a little brief, is well crafted, well paced, to the point that I was excited to learn more each time I came across another miraculously durable recording device. Now, I won't spoil the ending, but what I will say is there's a choice to be made at a critical moment at the end of the game, and that choice and the ending that followed was compelling enough that I played through the entire game a second time just to see the other option. Moving on to level design. This game nails it. Generally speaking, you can see both sides of whatever channel you happen to be in at any given moment. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this in non-linear games. I am all for exploring levels, find secret areas, find cool items, etc., etc. But when I have to quadruple my playtime just to make sure that I don't miss anything, that's where I begin to get frustrated. The channels, generally speaking, are narrow enough that you can see if there's an opening over there to the right, and maybe I should go investigate. The channels also have a good variety of space available. Sometimes you're cruising around at top speed with little to no problem, no real imminent threat. Others you need to use extreme caution, and really everything in between. And again, these are very well balanced, so you don't get bored. Sometimes you're going fast, sometimes you are a surgeon trying to navigate this thing between mines and stuff like that. The layout and order of the map is also very, very good. There are multiple paths to take very often, but you are rewarded for exploring. You might find additional duct tape for repairs, or perhaps a low-risk area to experiment with new elements like the sea mines. Speaking of that, I mean, Game Design 101 is in full effect with introducing the new obstacles, whether it's vents in the rock faces or giant rock slabs that you need to drag around for puzzle solving, or sea mines. You're always introduced to a new element in relative safety before you're asked to contend with them for real. This is much appreciated because having that little bit of time to play around and see what does what allows you to play the game more smoothly moving forward. Now, when it comes to the puzzles, they are pretty straightforward, but nonetheless enjoyable. I had a particularly tense moment that arose from having to dodge a sinking ship that I blew up with a mine, and I don't think I played that the way the devs intended it to be played. I was kind of sandwiched between two pieces, but that's really neither here nor there. There is one puzzle in particular that I enjoyed a lot and shows some sophistication in terms of level design. There's this huge column of rock slabs that you can make lean by pulling with the grappling hook, but you can't get it to fall over and expose the path that you need to go through, which forces the player to think outside the box a little bit, realize that the grappling hook that you've been using for every puzzle so far isn't going to work. And perhaps those sea mines that you've been so carefully avoiding might have another use other than giving you a heart attack when you accidentally touch one. And there you have it. The Lost Eternity is an excellent game. It's incredible to me, frankly, that four people were able to put this thing together so polished, so enjoyable in only like 7 days. I highly recommend you go play it. Links to the game and the dev social media are in the descriptions below. And that's it for this episode of Indie Spotlight. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit like. If you really liked it, forget about the like button. Who cares about that? Just hit the subscribe button instead. And if you didn't like it, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back. And in the meantime, feel free to tear me apart in the comments section. Speaking of comments, please do let me know if you like this format and want to see more of it, or if you have any suggestions for how it might be tweaked in the future. Until next time, I'm Irish Ronin, reminding you the most important game loop in life. Do, fail, learn, repeat. See you later.